Okay, everybody, I'm showing 2 p.m. on my clock. So just a couple quick reminders. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Turlock Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability, the two Groundwater Sustainability Agencies Technical Advisory Committees meeting. Just some basic ground rules real quick. Please don't put the call on hold. Go on mute unless you wish to speak. And then follow basic rules for courtesy that we're all familiar with when we're on Zoom. Public comment is always encouraged by us. We'll take that on matters not listed on the agenda early on with the public comment, public participation item. And then we'll also look for questions or comments on items that are listed on the agenda, as well as is our practice. The raised hand feature is located, depending on your version of Zoom, either in the reactions pane, which you have a screenshot there showing it, where to click it, or also sometimes it's on your actual display as well, if you have a newer version of Zoom, I believe. If you're on the phone, *9 will get your hand raised, but of course you could just unmute at the right time so you could speak. We're always wanting to get public comment. We're recording the meeting right now, and the meeting materials are available online. The main presentation given today is on the two sustainability indicators is already located on the site if you want to pull that up at any point in time as well. It's right next to the agenda for today's meeting. With that being said, I'll hand it over to Karen and Kevin to run this meeting, and I'll put the agenda up on the screen.
Hi there. Welcome to the Joint East and West Groundwater Basin Association Technical Advisory Committee. It is 2:02 to call the meeting to order. I'm going to do a roll call, and I have a partial list here, so if I miss anybody on the west side, please chime in. City of Turlock. Hearing none. TID.
I'm here. This is Debbie.
Herb's here as well.
Denair Community Service District. City of Modesto.
This is Jim Alves for Miguel Alvarez. You can hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi, Jim.
Hello.
Merced County.
Lacey McBride is here.
And Brody's here as well.
Okay, Stanislaus County.
Ward.
Delhi Community Water District. City of Waterford.
Yes, I'm here.
Mike Pitcock. Hillmar Community Water District. And if there's anyone I missed, please let us know.
Karen, I think Leandro just joined.
I just joined. Karen, present.
Okay, thank you. So Kevin, would you like me to hand it over to you to start your roll call?
Please, I appreciate it. Thanks, Karen. Good afternoon, everybody. I heard Brody and Lacey from Merced County and Walt from Stanislaus County. Belico Cortez is, I saw Dennis on the list. Is you there, Dennis?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, welcome. How about Matt Beeman from Merced ID? Okay, well, we have 4 out of 5, and of course I'm here. So call the meeting to order at whatever time it is, 2:02.
So
2:05.
Sorry, Kevin. On to the approval of minutes then. We have the minutes from the March 25th, 2021 regular meeting. Has everybody had a chance to look over those, or is there any questions, comments, or concerns?
No, I will go ahead and motion. Leandro.
Okay, that's a first. Is there a second?
Second, Waterford.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody who oppose? Could you please, or I'm sorry, if everybody approves, please signify by saying aye.
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 And if anyone opposes, please signify by saying nay. Hearing none, the motion carries. Kevin, to you.
Thank you. And on the east side, same thing. I'd like to consider the minutes of March 25th. A motion to approve, please.
Move approval. Walt.
I'll second Dennis.
Thanks, Walt. Thanks, Dennis. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Hearing no and opposed passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, so on to number 5 is public participation. This is a time set aside for members of the public to directly address the Technical Advisory Committee on any item of interest that the public is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Technical Advisory Committee, and to address the Technical Advisory Committee on any item on the posted agenda. There are 5 minutes for your comments. If you wish to speak regarding an item on the agenda, you may be asked to defer your remarks until the Technical Advisory Committee addresses the matter. No action or discussion may be taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. So anybody who would like to speak, please do so.
Yes, Karen, this is Milt Treeweiler, Turlock citizen.
Hi, Milt.
Turlock Subbasin GSA TAC members, it's your responsibility to understand every issue and subject to the best of your ability before you make decisions. Todd Groundwater, it's your responsibility to provide accurate scientific information backed by facts. The Groundwater Sustainability Agency is not an opinion poll on what the members believe or want to believe. It's a search for the truth, even if that truth contradicts everything you believe. TAC members, all of you need to be open-minded. I'm always searching for truth, whether it supports or contradicts something I believe. I always try to be open-minded and search for the truth. If I find something I believe is not true, I'll change my beliefs. I have a few concepts I'd like to share with you. It's important to have a realistic and practical approach to decision making. Making good decisions requires good and factual information. The Cambridge Dictionary defines delusion as something a person believes or wants to be true when it's actually not true. I want to share a quote on the scientific method by Neil Tyson. Begin quote. The scientific method can be summarized in one sentence. Do whatever it takes to avoid fooling yourself into thinking something's true that is not true, or thinking that something is not true that is true. I'm going to finish with a statement on the laws of physics. The laws of physics apply to every one of us, regardless of our political beliefs, our country of origin, or our religious upbringing. Let's be open-minded. Let's do the best we can and make good decisions, even though we know that sometimes we will make mistakes. Thank you.
Thank you, Milt. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Hearing none, we'll move on to the budget. We have Michael Clipper, the treasurer of the West Turlock Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency. He'll present an overview of current and future expenditures and revenues for the West Turlock GSA. Michael Clipper, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Beginning March 1st, 2021, in the West Turlock account, we started out with $165,184.30. We ended the month with $165,113.32. We've recently cut checks for legal fees And when they post, we will have $144,408.32 for the West Turlock account. And that'll kind of bring us up to current. That'll bring incorporate everything kind of to date. Any questions on the West Turlock account?
Yeah, why'd you shave? That was a great looking beard.
It's summer. So then moving on to the Basin account, we started March with $1,058,273.32. We cut several checks and we ended let me rephrase that. Several checks posted. We ended the month with $928,045.99. Then we again cut a few checks recently, which have not posted or will post in April. And so we will end as of today with all bringing everything current. We will have $902,000, $145.74. And so that should bring us current on all outstanding bills and revenue. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. This is Kevin. On the east side, the second bullet there, the JPA board met this morning, and similar balance amount that you had on the west side there. Everything's current. Looks like we'll meet budget for the end of the year. We're expecting to see a draft budget. I was expecting to see it today. It's not going to be shown until the May meeting, so a month from now. And nothing unusual to report. It's paying all its bills and completing all its business within budget. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to address them. And that's all we have for a budget report then, Karen.
Okay, thank you so much. We do have number 7, a decision on minimum thresholds for surface water interaction and chronic lowering of water levels. We're going to review and discuss the minimum thresholds for surface water interaction, chronic lowering of water levels. Phyllis Stanton is here to present. Are you ready, Phyllis?
I am ready. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone see the screen? I hope. Let's get it into a mode we can work from here. Okay, thank you. It's nice to see everyone's face again. Today, we're going to be talking about an approach for minimum thresholds for 2 of our sustainability indicators, the chronic lowering of water levels and interconnected surface water. These are recommendations that are coming from our new ad hoc committee, well, relatively new, formed in February. This ad hoc committee is really moving things forward. They've reviewed technical analyses and discussed these issues in much more detail than we really have time for in the larger TAC meetings. They're essentially a small working group of representatives from both TACs, making it a lot easier to schedule multiple meetings, improving coordination, and facilitating the decision making. The committee makes findings and recommendations and then brings those recommendations back to the TAC for approval to move forward. And that's what we're going to be doing today. This process has already been used successfully for the approval of the land subsidence minimum thresholds, which have already occurred. And today we're going to be considering 2 additional sustainability indicators, interconnected surface water and the chronic lowering of water levels. I won't go through too much detail, but I thought it would be helpful to just bring us back onto the same page that we were when we left off. We had already discussed the interconnected surface water with respect to our 3 river boundaries, including the Tuolumne, which is shown here in blue, San Joaquin in the middle there in brown, and the Merced River in green. What you're looking at are contributions to and from the groundwater system. And what we learned from the historical period is that we were contributing to the stream flows in these rivers from the groundwater system. And as we move into the projected baseline and water levels are lower, we're actually seeing some additional stream flow depletion. So the ad hoc committee has been looking at the details of all of this and determining, making some findings and making some determinations regarding that. We had previously defined undesirable results as occurring if depletions of interconnected surface water cause significant and unreasonable adverse impacts on the beneficial uses of surface water. And so due to declining water level, we have seen river seepage increase over time. And our projected future modeling indicates that stream flow depletion would increase and the rivers could even become disconnected if water levels decline further. So the districts responsible for the operation of the river have examined these projections of depletion and have determined that if they occur, they would be considered undesirable results with respect of impacting surface water uses. So arresting the groundwater declines along the river is the strategy for avoiding these undesirable results. We had previously pulled information from the regulations regarding the guidance for minimum thresholds for interconnected surface water. And that regulation actually is reproduced there. It says that the minimum threshold shall be the rate or volume of surface water depletions caused by groundwater use that has adverse impacts on surface water beneficial uses and may lead to undesirable results. We recognize that the regulations are suggesting that we look at volumes or rates of depletion, but we also recognize that there's a direct correlation between water levels and the rates and volumes of depletion that we are projecting. So in order to use water levels as a proxy for our minimum thresholds, we need to demonstrate that the minimum threshold for interconnected surface water is related and to another sustainability indicator, and which would be sufficiently protective of the interconnected surface water. So what we have done is to look at the possibility of using a minimum threshold selected for chronic lowering of water levels as protective for this sustainability indicator, recognizing that these two are very much related. So I have just a couple of quick details regarding the chronic lowering of water levels. The ad hoc committee also discussed this and determined that setting the minimum thresholds at the 2015 low water levels would address the issues associated to chronic lowering of water levels. And that's the adverse impacts to water supply wells that we've talked a lot about in the numerous TAC meetings. Setting them at the 2015 low water levels would also provide protection for the interconnected surface water and would mitigate historical overdraft. So there's a recognition that groundwater levels will continue to decline until projects and management actions can be implemented. So how do we meld those two ideas that we would like for to be able to maintain water levels at 2015 low water levels, but recognize that we can't just halt the rates of decline instantly within the groundwater system. So it needs to be managed in order to achieve sustainability over time, which is certainly allowed by SGMA. And we've talked about this before as well, but just as a brief review, SGMA does allow for minimum thresholds to be exceeded during the implementation period, but because they too recognize that sometimes it takes a while to sort of turn the ship around, is the phrase I've used in the past. A lot of people refer to this as a glide path. What you see on this diagram that we've talked about in several meetings prior to this is a situation where a minimum threshold has been established there on this theoretical graph at the orange line. We see blue water levels trending downward in this area as it does in our basin as well. And then recognizing that even after the submission date, water levels will continue to decline. That's the projection that's shown by that dashed line, and may fall below undesirable results while these projects are being implemented. But as long as there is a clear path associated with moving water levels back 2 levels above the minimum thresholds, then that's certainly allowed. And that's, some people refer to that as a glide path to sustainability. So that's just the phrase that I put there. I think people sometimes remember that well. But the process allows you to do this using interim milestones. So I just have that one additional slide that, again, we've looked at many times, that show that interim milestones can be set up to define a planned pathway to reach sustainability. And the interim milestone number 1 that you see there is actually below the minimum threshold, recognizing that you can't affect the changes of the groundwater system that quickly. But as long as there's a path to show progress along with the additional interim milestones, then you certainly can move in the direction of sustainability and demonstrate that you can reach your sustainability goal in that manner. So that's what the ad hoc committee has addressed and is recommending for the tax consideration to move forward. And today we'd like for you to consider and the approval process for the next 2 slides. This slide number 1, you will probably recognize the format. We've used it previously, where we have a definition of undesirable result that the TAC has discussed previously, along with the gray portion, which talks about what I call a framework or a way of actually managing and measuring minimum thresholds in our monitoring system. So I'll just quickly review the chronic lowering of water levels, which is this slide. We've already talked about and discussed the undesirable result, which is shown there, that it would be an undesirable result for chronic lowering of water levels if there were significant and unreasonable groundwater level declines, such that water levels are adversely impacted during multi-year droughts in a manner that cannot be readily managed or mitigated. We've certainly talked about numerous adverse impacts associated with the water supply wells that occurred in the previous drought of record. So today we'd like for you to consider that the minimum threshold will be expressed as the low groundwater elevations observed in fall 2015. This is consistent with protection of the adverse impacts to water supply wells, as well as protection of the interconnected surface water that we've just talked about. We have an additional framework here that says the undesirable result would be evidenced by an exceedance of the minimum threshold at a designated percentage of representative monitoring locations in a designated number of consecutive semi-annual monitoring events. And so we will be working with the ad hoc committee to add the details of this, but we wanted first to make sure that we're on the right path with respect to the approach to the minimum threshold. So that's why we wanted to come back to the TAC today and get approval to move forward with the framework information, which would also include interim milestones and the details of the representative monitoring network, along with monitoring events to be evaluated. So that is the slide for chronic lowering of water levels. We're going to come right back to this. But before we do that, I'd like to just also look at a very similar slide, almost identical, related to interconnected surface water. So we had an undesirable result defined for interconnected surface water that is shown here, significant and unreasonable adverse impacts on the beneficial uses of surface water. And today we're going to be considering that next sentence, the MT will be expressed as the low groundwater elevations observed in fall 2015. And similar to the previous slide, we also have a framework that will be used for how the MTs will be monitored and how undesirable results will be identified actually in the field at a designated percentage of representative monitoring locations and a designated number of consecutive semi-annual monitoring events. The details of the framework are not being asked to be approved today because that takes quite a bit of work, and we wanted to make sure that we were on the right path again for looking at the groundwater elevations in fall 2015 as we began to put this together. So the action that's being recommended by the ad hoc committee is the approval of these 2 undesirable result definition and frameworks for chronic lowering of water levels and interconnected surface water. And so I'm not sure exactly how the TAC would like to move forward, but my recommendation is perhaps we could take these one at a time and look first at chronic lowering of water level and ask for approval and then move to interconnected surface water, or we can do them both at once, whatever your pleasure.
Valerie, what do you think? Should we have two separate discussions and actions for each?
Yeah, I think so. I think that I think that's probably more clear for the record.
Okay, great. So perhaps we'll start with the chronic lowering of water levels since it's already on your screen. Again, you've already generally seen the undesirable result definition. We're asking for approval of that and approval for the approach of the minimum threshold, which is shown there in gray. And I see a question right away here from Rhett. If you can hear me, go right ahead and ask your question.
Yes, this is Rhett Calkins. I'm a farmer out here in the Houston area. The water levels that we're talking about, the minimum threshold 2015, is there a say a plane that changes height depending on where you're at? Where I'm at, I have the influence from the pumping in the East GSA pulling groundwater down. And in the interim, during summertime when the ag pumping starts, I also get additional influence from that. So minimum threshold, I have a lot of questions on. It changes across the basin, probably.
Yes, it does.
And so there's a map probably that says in 2015, this was the level near where you're at. That's what we're going to set it at. We could dip a little bit lower than that. Now, immediately in that dip, just because we're looking on averages, there's also bigger dips that happen when pumps come on, large pumps. So I'm looking at it from my place. When does my well dry out? I know what the levels, I know the current levels, I can measure levels. Minimum thresholds in aggregate mean one thing. Specifically to me, they mean something else because of the history of what's happened out here. So I'm really curious. I missed the ad hoc meetings. I don't know if I just didn't pay attention and I didn't attend those meetings. I'm really sorry I missed those meetings. I definitely want to attend the next ad hoc meetings because I want to get this. You've already gone through the details, and now this is just a review, to the tax, to both the tax and anyway. Those are my questions. Those are my issues. I'd like to attend these ad hoc meetings also.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Red. I'll just say a couple of quick things, and then anyone from the TAC who would like to clarify anything that I say, please jump right in. So the ad hoc committee meetings are not public. Those ad hoc committee meetings are a very small working group. They do that to keep it very nimble. Oftentimes there will be a convening of a meeting, and then it will be adjourned and then reconvened the very next day because the conversation was still continuing. And they have asked for very specific details and questions. And the purpose of that, again, is to just move things along a little bit faster. The details that you're referring to and the details that I'm referring to have actually all been presented in the TAC meetings. We've been talking about sustainable management criteria for about a year and 2 months now in numerous TAC meetings. So we have reviewed in detail the adverse impacts to water supply wells, to domestic wells, the replacement wells. We have looked at the areas of failed wells. We have looked at the municipal and community urban wells, which also have had some impacts, including some collapsed casing, some wells that needed to be deepened, et cetera. So we've gone through a tremendous amount of detail already at the TAC level. And so all the ad hoc committee is doing really is pulling together that information, asking for more very technical specific questions, and then moving that forward. Back to your questions regarding minimum thresholds. So the idea here is to look for the low water level that's in the aquifer. We recognize that there are spikes associated with pumping. That's going to, I think, happen in any groundwater basin. What we're really concerned here is to protect the groundwater resources from depletion, and obviously to protect adverse impacts from these wells on domestic wells and other water supply wells, but balancing the need to use the groundwater resource as well. And so our concern, of course, is to put together a monitoring program such that these areas that have been impacted, including the area that I don't know a lot of your details, but I know that you've been so nice at attending some of our other meetings, and you have expressed concerns, and you've given me a general understanding of where you are in the Subbasin. And you happen to be in an area where a lot of other domestic wells have also been impacted. And so we'll be monitoring that area very specifically for impacts going forward using these minimum thresholds. So the idea, of course, is to make sure that we protect, again, the aquifer from declining such that we have all of these water supply well issues. We feel like that, as far as we can tell, we've been through that, the drought of record. That was painful. We've declined water levels a little bit even since then. But at this point, there seems to be enough mitigation in the basin to be able to avoid, if we can, that process from happening again. And that was the whole idea and concept behind setting minimum thresholds at these fall 2015 water levels. And you're right, they will be different depending on the monitoring well. We do have a map. You could use that map, but we're going to be even more specific than that. We're going to look at the historical records in the monitoring wells that we're using. And to the extent that we have good records, and if we don't, we'll pull information from nearby wells to make sure that we capture the low water level during the drought of record. Does that help with some of your questions?
Thank you, Phyllis, and thank you for everybody's patience. I appreciate that explanation.
Any other questions?
Hi, this is Amanda Monaco with Leadership Council. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can, Amanda.
Great, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I'm calling in on my phone today because I'm not feeling super well. But thank you for the presentation, and I have a couple comments. First of all, I appreciate all of the work and time and conversation that's gone into shaping these minimum thresholds and undesirable results. I did want to make a couple comments on the minimum thresholds for the chronic lowering of groundwater levels and the undesirable results. On the undesirable results, from the perspective of domestic well and drinking water protection, we are a little concerned with that wording because it might seem like undesirable results could only be triggered after multiple years of drought, when we know that sometimes wells can often go dry and drinking water can often be put at risk even when we're not in a declared drought. And then my other comment would be on the minimum thresholds. The 2015 levels, we are encouraged to see the GSAs looking at that and proposing 2015 levels as a more protective minimum threshold for groundwater levels. But noting that the interim milestone dips below the fall 2015 levels, we'd like to get some information from staff on what that might mean for domestic wells, whether some wells would go dry, and what the GSA would plan to do to mitigate those impacts.
Thank you, Amanda. I'll try to address your two comments in order here. So the reason for including the multi-year droughts into the undesirable results is specifically because that's when we saw these well failures. And it was this drought of record that we all faced from the 2013 to 2016, really. It was quite a long drought. And of course, the drought of record, we hit historic lows. And because our adverse impacts to water supply wells that have been documented in the subbasin were all occurring during this multi-year drought, that's what we were specifically trying to capture in the undesirable result with respect to understanding that. By setting water levels at the fall 2015 low levels, we will be able to avoid water levels going below that in any significant time frame, especially overall lowering within the aquifer, which is what we're trying to avoid, of course. So, you know, that's just the explanation of why the wording got in there, is that we had impacts that we were specifically wanting to address during that long multi-year drought, and the concern that if it happens again, we want to be better prepared for it this time by having water levels higher. So that's the explanation for that. The interim milestones, I'll just make a comment that we haven't determined what they are yet. And we certainly will bring that back to the TAC again. We're trying to do this in order to move things forward. It's interesting because there's so many details to pull together. And so we decided at the ad hoc committee level to take this one sort of baby step at a time, to just push this forward so that we would have some better comprehension of where we need to go. So the interim milestones, if this is approved with respect to the fall 2015 levels, then that gives the technical team the opportunity to go back to begin looking at the monitoring network, determine what makes sense, finding out where the 2015 water levels are, and then determine based on rates of decline in that area, based on what we have seen associated really with recent declines as well, to come up with something reasonable for an interim milestone there. So that is yet to be determined, and you certainly will have an opportunity to comment and provide additional information on that at that time.
Okay, thank you, Phyllis.
Yeah, thank you. Rhett, did you have another question?
Yes. I'm curious if there exists a map that shows the minimum thresholds proposed. Probably not yet. It sounds like you're still working on it. That would be something I'm very interested in seeing. I'd like to see the contours across the basin, and if the cone of depression still exists in the minimum thresholds, and if that's a permanent fixture of our basin, things like that. I'm curious what we're looking at.
Absolutely. So soon to be produced is our third internal draft on the basin setting, which will include a map that has the October 2015 water levels. Again, we're going to be doing it on a monitoring well basis, looking at water levels locally. So that map is not quite as detailed as the data we're going to be using, but it would give you some kind of an idea, and that's coming very soon. So if you will stay in touch with us, we will be sure that when it's available, we'll make sure that you're aware of it.
All right, thank you, Phyllis.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone?
Yeah, Phyllis, Mike Day, I had sent you a question via chat here. You may not have seen it, but so
I'm so sorry if I don't see a hand raised. I have my screen completely covered with my presentation, so if
that's
I don't
okay
see
here. I'll just go ahead and read it. So if the word water supply wells, is that word intended to mean potable water supply wells, or does it also include irrigation or other non-potable uses?
So we have had impacts to non-potable water supply wells, agricultural water supply wells, and so that those adverse impacts are included in this definition.
Okay, thank you.
I'm so sorry, I just realized I can't see the chat. Any other questions that anyone else can see?
Yeah, Phyllis, this is Kevin.
Yes, Kevin.
I didn't see anything in chat either, Mike. So you sure you're on the right call? Just kidding.
I sent it just to Phyllis.
I'm sorry, yeah. Okay, any other questions? Any other discussion on chronic lowering of water levels? And if not, then I will ask the tax if they would like to move the approval process forward.
So do we have anybody that would like to present a motion?
Yeah, this is Walt Ward. I would like to make that motion. I think we're moving in the right direction and look forward to further pursuing this methodology.
So are you motioning to set chronic lowering of water levels at the 2015
Yes.
call? Okay, do we have a
And
second?
the interim measure milestones that go along with that.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll be second. And this is Hisham. Is that how we go, or should we go east and west?
I think we have to go east and west. Sorry, Hisham.
Okay, so Walt, are you east or west?
East with you.
Okay, put together.
We could go first, Karen. I'll take that motion with Walt and Hisham. And then you could go second. Is that okay, Karen?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. And the motion, just to clarify for the record, Tara, is to recommend the slide that was presented to us today by Phyllis that's currently on the screen, entitled Chronic Lowering of Water Levels, Undesirable Results, and Approach to Minimum Threshold Recommendation.
Yes.
That's what the motion is, to approve by the TAC, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, motion passes unanimously. And back over to you, Karen.
Okay, could I get a motion from the west side, please?
I'll motion, Karen. Leandro.
And I'm sorry, who are you?
Leandro, Delhi County Water District.
Okay, thank you, Leandro. Is there a second?
Second, Waterford.
Okay, Mike Pickock with Waterford. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please signify by saying nay. Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, great. And we'd like to see the TAC consider the same process for interconnected surface water, which we've already discussed. Be glad to answer any questions if there is any further discussion.
Phyllis, I have one. This is Kevin. You know, I just don't remember this language. I'm sorry.
For the undesirable result.
Yeah.
It was in our, and I believe it's August. August.
Oh, it was way back then.
Technical. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's been a long time. The August technical memoranda that we prepared, memorandum that we prepared regarding the framework. We did receive comments from the East Turlock Subbasin GSA, and so this was not. I don't think there were any comments on this particular sustainability indicator. It is relatively generic, and it's pretty much straight out of the regulations.
I'm sorry, out of the
regulations, the GSP regulations.
Yeah, I'm just not sure why we're being so kind to beneficial users of surface water as compared to, like we did with the wells, of saying, through a multi-year drought, of things that can't be addressed or mitigated. If you follow.
Yeah, I do follow you. This was, I think this might be along the lines of the Sigma statement of not impacting current water rights, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right. Now that you refresh my memory, thank you. The other thing is under the minimum thresholds, we weren't really talking about representative monitoring locations. Well, we haven't defined those, but specifically what we were talking about at the ad hoc committee, I believe, was representative monitoring wells close to the river, correct?
Absolutely. And it's only because we haven't finalized that monitoring network that I'm not showing anything about that today.
Okay. Thank you. That was all my questions.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything to add or ask? Oh, I actually just saw a way to get my chat box up. Mike Day, I do see your question. It did register. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I didn't see it the first time.
No problem.
Anyone else have anything to say about the recommendation for interconnected surface water? If not, I'll turn it back over to the tax.
I had the same, just if Kevin's comment, I think was a good one to kind of double think on, is because that has some language in it, kind of explaining what we don't want to have happen again. And if this one doesn't have that same kind of language, is it going to be triggered under a different circumstance?
The short answer to that is no, because we're actually defining how it's triggered, right? But if others are unsure about the undesirable result, the way for me to move forward is for everyone to approve the minimum thresholds. So if that's an issue, I'm continuing to sort of pull this out.
Trenchless crossings.
This is actually something I thought we had already talked about and discussed, but
yeah.
So is it possible to do a motion just for the thresholds and work on the definition again, maybe at the next meeting, or?
Yes, that would be fine with me if that's the desire of the TAC.
And will you go first again, Kevin?
Yeah, happy to. And I think that's a good approach, but don't be surprised, I guess, anybody, if we end up with this language, because I think Phil has struck a memory thought with me, is that this is what the regulations were kind of telling us we had to have in there. But yeah, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minimum threshold as stated on the slide entitled Interconnected Surface Water Undesirable Results and Approach to Minimum Threshold Recommendation.
Karen, do you mind that if I make a motion to accept it as is and see if it passes? And then, because I think we've been through this before, that's my, so, and if it doesn't pass, and if you're okay with that, Kevin, if it passes. If it doesn't, then we would go for only the minimum threshold and work on the definition.
Okay, for both the UR and the MT.
I would like to make a motion for both the UR and the MT, and if it doesn't pass, then I understand, then we'll go for the MT.
Very good, Hisham. Thank you. That's the motion. Anybody want to second that?
I'm sorry, before we second that, could I just add, so what you're doing today is approving this so that the technical team can move forward and getting this together for the undesirable result. If anybody has heartburn with it, there is an opportunity to change it later. Do you know what I mean? So I just want to make sure that people don't feel like this is now or never. We would just like for the general approval of the TAC to move forward on this slide. So I appreciate the motion being this slide. Thank you, Hisham.
Yeah, just to kind of so we could move forward. Exactly.
Okay, do I have a second on Hisham's motion, please?
That is Walt, I second.
Very good. Any further discussion, comment?
Is there public discussion on this item?
Of course.
Okay, this is Rhett Calkins.
Sure, Rhett.
I'm a little bit lost. I understand that groundwater is connected to surface water, and groundwater goes down, and the surface waters get sucked down too. And this river that several rivers we're talking about, but let me talk about the Tuolumne River that the TID is operating in. A tremendous amount of water we got to put in that thing for fish. So if there's less water in there for fish, then we got to put more water in, right? TID's got to put more water in. In drought years, when we could use that for irrigation, it's the state wants that water. I think they want that water in there for fish, and then the riparian users got first rights. So there's a reason that this is in here, and if we're taking it out, I don't agree. I think it needs, this is a criteria we need to show the state that we're respective of what's happening in that river. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhett. You understand though that, Rhett, that the motion is to recommend we move forward with this slide as it appears. We haven't made any changes.
I understand that. I heard your discussion, and it looked like it was going to go the other way. I just want to put my 2 cents in for whatever it's worth.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we weren't, you didn't think we were modifying this at all. We're leaving.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Bye.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Karen?
Okay, for the west side, could I please get a motion?
This is Walt, I'll make that motion.
I will second.
And that's going to be for the MTs and the URs, correct?
Right.
Correct.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, for those who support this, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Sounds like the motion carries. Thank you.
And Red, I don't know if you had one more thing you wanted to say, or maybe that hand was raised from previously and we didn't get it down yet.
No, that was from previous. I was trying to get in the middle of that conversation, but I just had to jump in on the microphone, so I don't need that raised hand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And the last thing I'd like to add for the record is that I did finally find this in the regulations, and this is in section 354.28 minimum thresholds of the GSP regulations. This is item number B6. And the, I'm sorry, is that right? I'm sorry, it is item C6. And the regulations actually read, the minimum threshold for depletions of interconnected surface water shall be the rate or volume of surface water depletions caused by groundwater use that has adverse impacts on beneficial uses of surface water. So that's where that came from. Thank you. Rhett, did you have some, is it a new hand or is that a previous hand? That's probably a previous hand.
I'm sorry, do I need to lower my hand now?
No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. I am so sorry. I keep refreshing my screen to make sure I don't miss any additional comments.
Okay,
That's it.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm all good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And that is it for me, and I am all good as well. Thank you, TAC, for moving the process forward. The technical team is going to get going with what we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. It was very nice to get over this hurdle. We've been working on this very hard for quite some time. So it feels good to move past. I hope others feel the same. We have number 8, Sigma related updates. This is an opportunity for TAC members to discuss and provide updates on issues related to the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. A list of topics could include, but are not limited to, the items below, and no action will be taken. Do we have any updates for public outreach, Herb?
Yeah, I have 3 quick updates. I'll give them quickly. The first is that you may have seen it on the slide deck before the call. I believe it's our 5th groundwater lunch hour is next Friday, or the 30th, not this Friday, but next Friday. And so we're going to be holding that. It's just an informal discussion. We open up a Zoom line for an hour. We have people from the Subbasin to answer questions, and we kind of have an informal presentation, just kind of that's relatively topical given the timing. And so just wanted to point that out. Information's available at turlockgroundwater.org, and it's next Friday, the 30th, from 12:30 to 1:30, and it's on Zoom. Second piece here is the facilitation support services scope of work and application that we've been developing through the TAC, and we even brought it to the West Turlock Subbasin GSA board a week and a half ago, because that's the entity filing it, although it does involve the East Turlock Subbasin GSA as well. We're working on finishing up that and sending it to the Department of Water Resources for I want to say we're looking at acquiring funding through the use of a consultant that DWR utilizes for various outreach measures and facilitation related measures as we get toward the end of the year. More so outreach than facilitation, but it still falls under the scope of their facilitation support services program. And so we're getting ready to submit that, and we'll provide an update to you probably at the next meeting. Hopefully that's been successfully submitted. And so we've been working with the department on it, and it'll help us have a few things moving forward toward the end of the year that will be helpful for outreach. And then lastly, I mentioned it before, but the EDF RCAC Water Leadership Institute that we've been partnering with had its first meeting of the cohort yesterday, last evening. It was there's, I want to say, 10 or 11 people who have applied, and they discussed leadership styles in general, and there's 14 more weeks to go, and so they've got their class going, and we have an opportunity to talk a lot. There's probably, I want to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 7 different sessions where they are looking for presentations from somebody from our group to talk about groundwater management and a slew of other water related issues and challenges and history. And so I'm going to try and work with this group here to try and see if we can have some speakers and have some presentations as we move forward for the next 14 weeks. And you'll hear more from me on that. But that's it for me. Happy to answer any questions or take comments if needed.
Okay. We also have the grant update. Debbie, do you have anything on that?
Hold on, I'm bringing everything up. Thanks. Yes, I do have a short update. And I wanted to give a little bit of an update on the work so kind of combining the grant update with the schedule and what the ad hoc group has been working on, and what the plan is to move some of that up to the TAC for discussion and that sort of thing as we move forward. So I just have a few items to talk through. One, as you know, the ad hoc has been working on going through the comments that the agencies provided on the draft chapters that the consultant team provided to the TAC. So what's transpired is that the individual agencies provided comments, then the East Turlock TAC met and combined and developed a combined set of comments. There were just a few entities that provided comments on the west side. We combined those comments and then we exchanged them. And we met earlier this week to discuss the comments, and we're combining those sets of comments into one set of comments that will be recirculated back to the TAC for concurrence before it gets forwarded on to the technical team to incorporate into the draft. And it's our intent at that point that we would have a final draft that from the TAC that would then be brought back to the GSAs for their ability to review and then release it to the public for comment. And so we're pretty close to having that draft comment to be able to send back out to the TAC for their final review. So, so I wanted you to know that. And then that would, like I said, once we've reviewed or revised those chapters, we would be generating a public review draft for the GSAs as well as the public once the GSAs release it to the public for review. So we're really excited about being to that point. It's taken a little bit, but the other thing is that we've developed a process that we think we can repeat for the following chapters, and so that's a good thing. And so we'll work on consolidating it and making it a little more streamlined, so it takes a little less time, but it's taken a little while to work through some of that. So thank you all for bearing with us as we've done that. We are also meeting next week to talk through recommendations to bring to the TAC for how to facilitate the public review process of the draft chapters as they're released. And so we're going to be bringing that to you and the coming meetings, hopefully this next one, but there's more to follow. And then we are also working on the sustainable yield analysis or initial drafts of that. And so that is going to be coming to the TAC as well to provide direction on the approach as we move forward. It won't be a final because there's a lot of additional things that have to come into it, but you'll be able to see some initial runs to better understand the approach that will be taken in developing that sustainable yield analysis. And so that'll be coming to you in the coming weeks as well. And lastly, we are working on recommendations for budgets for the coming fiscal year. That items that we're working on include one, the annual report. So I think I've mentioned to you folks before that Sigma requires that we do an annual report every year. Our first one is due mere months after the GSP is adopted in January. So it's due on April 1st, I believe. And that is required to encompass all of the data from 2015 through water year 2021. And so you're talking, I think, 6 additional years of data. And so it's a significant undertaking, and we'll be having to start that in October to be able to have it done by April. So we're working through options on how best to do that. and we'll be coming to you with some recommendations. Also, monitoring wells. We're going to need some additional monitoring wells along the rivers, as well as within the West Turlock Subbasin GSA. And so will be some recommendations on how to move forward with those. And lastly, there's some additional work that the consultant team has been asked to do that was above and beyond the original scope in order to be able to work through some of the things that we've had to work through. And so there'll be some discussion and a recommendation with respect to that as well. And so we're working through all of that. So that's what I have for you right now. Oh, and lastly, Phyllis and I are working on that more detailed schedule that we're going to post online. It's still we found that it's moved around quite a bit as the ad hoc continues to work through things. We'll work through one thing at a meeting. We think they'll be done, and then there'll be additional questions, and so we'll have to add a different meeting to kind of work through that as well. And so so we're still working on how best to visualize that and make it useful for people. And so I hope to have that available here shortly. So I hope that answers or helps with where we are with that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
I have a question. This is Rhett.
Hi, Rhett.
Hi. The draft Sigma chapters that you're working on, I'd like to get a peek as soon as possible. I'm not sure who's representing me or the rural well person. Maybe it's Stanislaus County, maybe it's Walter Ward. But just in my own interest, I'd like to see the drafts sooner rather than later. I'm sure the schedule is going to require a compression of the public comment period to whatever the statutory minimum is, and that's not a long time to go through some technical data representing how you're going to calculate sustainable yield and what the sustainable yield is and across the entire basin. So there's a lot to look at, I'm sure, in this documentation. Anyway.
There is a lot. Thank you so much for that question, Rhett. And we recognize that. And so what we've been planning on doing, it's taken us a little while to get the first chapters out, but the intent is to make it available in smaller chunks rather than the entire GSP, which is a huge volume of information. And so the intent is to work through it at the TAC so that we feel it's a good document and representative of what our understanding is. And then at that point, and we're close to that, at that point, then it would be moved up to the GSA, and the GSA would receive a presentation on it and have an opportunity to release it to the public for a public review timeline. And so by having that in smaller chunks, we think it's more readily reviewable for everyone. And so that was the intent, and we didn't want to wait until the very end to release the whole document. I think some other subbasins did that, and it was really hard. Although there is, once the GSAs adopt the plan, there is an additional public review process through DWR. So there's multiple bites at the apple to provide comments. So be aware of that as well. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate it.
Debbie, this is Milt Treewiler, and I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I had contacted her because I wanted to take part in the public review of the draft chapter on climate change. So has that already taken place? I didn't know when the cutoff was, so now you're telling me the only thing I can do is make the public comment to the Department of Water Resources, and I can't make it to the TAC group.
No, the climate change chapter has not been released yet. We haven't released any chapters yet. This is our first.
Thank you,
group of
Debbie. Thank you.
chapters
Thank you.
Will be released.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you
Okay.
will have an opportunity. And also, I would encourage everyone who has an interest in providing comments and being engaged in this process, any part of this process, to sign up for our I'm using the term, Herb, but our stakeholder list. And Herb has been emailing information out to people as things are happening. And when we have lunch hours and public workshops and all types of things. And so that's your best bet in knowing exactly when those are released and how to provide comment.
Well, just a comment there, Debbie. I was on that list, and for some reason I'm no longer on it. I have to go to the website to find out when the meetings occur. So do I need to re-sign up for that, or what do you think is the best approach? Or just say, Herb, put me back on the list, or make sure I'm on the list?
Milt, what I'll do is I'll take a look at it. I know I'm familiar with your email address. We've exchanged emails a bit. And so I'll take a look and double check on that, at least on the back end for us. And in the meanwhile, I know you get my emails that I reply to you or send you personally to your from individually, I guess I'll say, from my work email. So I will whenever we send anything out, the next time we send something out, I will send it to you directly as well. But I'll also check on the back end to see if there's any if your email is still on there and that you receive our mass emails that we send as well. So we will make sure that you are informed.
Thank you, Herb.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody in the group have any more questions?
This is Rhett Calkins. I have a comment on the emails that Herb is coordinating. This is great. I love it. I mean, I get reminders the day before, which is great because I'm doing a million different things, and I get advance notice of these meetings too. And I just wanted to provide that feedback. Really good job on keeping us up to speed. Thank you.
Good job, Herb. Well, if no one else has anything, we'll move on to number 9 of the agenda, the next meeting. The next meeting is a special meeting scheduled for Thursday, April 29th, 2021. Kevin, do you have anything else?
No, thank you, Karen. I'm good. You want a motion to adjourn?
That would leave us to the adjournment. Do we have a motion to leave the meeting today?
I'll motion. Leandro.
Thank you, Leandro. A second?
Second.
Was that you, Debbie?
Yes. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned on the west side. Kevin?
I'd like to adjourn the east as well. Would somebody make that motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
I heard Dennis.
Second.
And Hisham. And Walt.
Aye.
We got a triple motion. Aye, we're adjourned. Thank you at whatever time it is.
Thank you very much. It is 3:14. We are adjourned.